All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us during the Lytham Partners Spring 2022 Investor Conference. My name is Robert Blum, Managing Partner of Lytham Partners, and during this presentation, we welcome POND Technologies, ticker symbol of POND on the TSX Venture, as well as PNDHF on the OTCQB, and the company's Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Grant Smith. I would also like to point out that POND's VP of Project Development, Peter Howard, will be joining us later this conference during a panel discussion surrounding emissions reduction technologies to meet net zero targets. So we hope you all be able to join us. That'll be coming up on Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern time for that discussion there. Before I turn it over to Grant, I just want to remind everyone that the company will be available for one-on-one meetings later this week. If you've not already signed up, you can go ahead and send me an email. That's Blum, B-L-U-M, at lythampartners.com, or you can visit the website at lythampartners.com/virtual. Click on the one-on-one meeting request button, and we'll look to get you taken care of. So with that said, Grant, let me turn the floor over to you.
Sure. Well, thanks, Robert, for having me, and looking forward to our presentation today on POND Technologies. Just going to share the screen. Okay, so as we mentioned, Robert, thank you. It's POND, P-O-N-D, and on the OTC, PNDHF are the tickers. So I'll just do an overview of the company today, highlighting our technology. We have 3 divisions within POND, the focus being carbon abatement in POND Carbon, the focus being specialized proteins in POND Biotech, and the selling of algae and the various ingredients and extracts that come out of algae are sold through our POND Naturals division. We'll highlight the ownership and financials. We'll touch on our leadership and have a great discussion around POND. So our company overview, this first slide is really our highlight slide that I always like to show. It really talks about the company, who we are and what we do. We're based just outside of Toronto, Canada. We're a clean tech that is also becoming an ag tech or a green tech. As we take CO2, we take emissions from a stack, and we grow algae, a very sustainable and valuable byproduct. So as you can see here on the slide, we are showing a highlight of a smokestack or an emitter. And this could be any industry. This could be heavy oil and gas. This could be a coal-fired power plant. This could be a little greener in terms of maybe a distillery, a food processing factory. And we take 2 tons of CO2 to grow 1 ton of algae in the photobioreactor. So the CO2 is literally just through basically maybe, a couple hundred feet or however far away from the emitter stack. We have a pond system or a pond plant. And we just attach our pipes and we send the CO2 into the photobioreactor. We seed it with algae, and we turn on the lights. And this grows very, very valuable ingredients. As you can see here, we have sort of starting at the bottom, fertilizers, and then we have animal feed, fish feed. We have a large growing area in pet feed, and we have human feed and also proteins that I mentioned from our biotech industry. So we can put up a small system, we can put up a large system. It really depends on how much CO2 one has and how much CO2 one wants to abate. And then that determines, again, at a 2-to-1 ratio, how much algae we can grow. So on site, we have an example maybe of a 2,000 square foot space. We can absorb 6 to 10 tons of CO2 a year, producing 3 to 6 tons of algae. And this would represent maybe a demo facility. A much larger facility would be, reducing significant amounts of CO2 and growing significant amounts of protein from algae. And we'll touch on that later in the presentation. So this is an example of how algae is currently grown. Algae is typically grown in water in outdoor farms. On the top left, you can see these are football-sized fields. Algae grows in the top few inches. So again, large amount of land and labor required to grow. You have a lot of cooling requirements. You have a lot of maintenance. The bottom left is more along the lines of a glass tube, again, using some sunlight, but mostly LED. And this product is also climate dependent, has to have a lot of pumping, daylight hours only, and a pond system would be something we're showing here, a containerized. So this is something that's very modular. It can be moved, it can be expanded upon, and inside the container, we would have what I'm showing here in the bottom right. This would be around a 20,000 liter tank filled with LED lights. You can see these small little pink lights on that presentation photograph. Those are the LED lights. They light up that container. And think of this as sort of 3D growing of algae. We're growing the algae in every square inch of that container. So rather than the top left or in those tubes where they're only growing in a small surface area, we can grow, if it was sort of, say a swimming pool, there would be algae growing in every corner as well as the top, bottom, and the middle. So this is a fraction of the land, far less water. We recycle the water, increase yield, no contamination. If you look at the outdoor ponds, you have, obviously you have weather and you have a lot of contamination just in the air that you have to deal with. So very clean, green growth system, highlighting LED technology and CO2 abatement. The other forms on the left, obviously, are there's no CO2 abatement whatsoever. They're actually creating CO2. So the market opportunity. The market opportunity for algae when pond first started was really more along the area of biofuels and I would say fertilizer, maybe land and soil reclamation, putting algae or putting life back into the topsoil. As the market has continued to evolve and learn that we can no longer grow enough plant protein to feed animals, algae has become a target ingredient that's being added to animal feed and fish feed. So as that has evolved, and I'm sure everyone's aware, we've had an increase in what I would call this vegan protein movement. You've had an increase in people realizing that we cannot continue to farm the planet. So the vertical model and sustainable protein that's grown in algae has grown to a target market of 10 billion in the food and nutraceutical and beverage industries. This is a massive market that is looking for sustainable protein. We can no longer feed the planet on typical animal protein. So starting in the beginning, you have omega-3 fatty acids, you have natural colors, you have extracts, you have proteins with perfect amino acid profile. All of these ingredients can come out of algae, and they're perfectly suited for the future of the food and beverage and the nutraceutical market. The price per ton varies, but that is very, very expensive. The animal and fish feed market we're realizing now is infinite. So again, we can hook up a pond system to an animal operation. We can take all the parts of the animal that are not used. That goes up a stack as CO2. We can grow algae and feed it back to the animal. So a really nice, clean, closed loop system. This market is cheaper in terms of price per ton, but there's also significant advantages in the fact that if you're feeding algae to animals, you've reduced arable land farming. So you have also further decreased the usage of land, usage of water, and CO2 creation. Moving up the value chain, we have a brand new biotech division that we've just started. And really this fell in our lap where we had a customer come to us with an algae that they had done some work on, but they weren't able to grow it at scale. And our technology is very scalable, and we were able to grow this specialized protein within algae. So this market, again, very specialized, a lot smaller in terms of CO2 abatement, but a very, very unique industry for pond. And lastly, again, back to the beginning, it was more the bioremediation and the cleaning ups of tailings ponds and cleaning up of land and soil. This is an area where algae has a very, very interesting opportunity and would also require a lot of algae, which would again abate a lot of CO2. So as you can see, we have a patent around 26 active patents, but we have a moat around the technology. Anyone connected to stack gas and growing algae would infringe on our patent. So the use of stack gas with light water and CO2 really is the mode of our technology. We spent many years developing that technology with a partner, and we now have patents in the US, many companies in Europe, Taiwan, China, and the Middle East. So some of our notable partnerships, as I just mentioned, AB Agri is a global animal food company that is dedicated to algae. They first did their homework They looked at all different various sources of alternative protein, and they chose algae. And next they chose pond. I'll get into our partnership in greater detail with AB Agri. The beginnings of the company, we worked with the NRC, a Canadian National Research Council, and we've had continued collaboration with the NRC. Our second largest shareholder and significant partner is St. Mary's Cement. We actually have a plant in operation. It's a large scale pilot plant where we've grown pretty much every species of algae that we've been asked to grow off of stack gas from St. Mary's Cement. So this is an excellent facility, and we are continuing to work with St. Mary's. And we've recently partnered with Malone Group, an Irish-based company that's helping us with AB Agri and other projects in North America to deliver our EPC work within all of our partners. So again, I mentioned the three. Pond Technologies Holdings Inc. contains really three core divisions within our business. The middle one is really where we hold the tech. This is Pond Carbon. In Pond Carbon, we have all of our patents, and we have what I like to call sort of the core focus within Pond. CCU, using carbon and growing algae. So again, this is everything that I talked about prior in terms of, abating CO2 and growing algae. The revenue line within Pond Carbon is quite interesting. We have a technology access fee up front. We're then selling equipment. We're selling a system that grows the algae. And then we're also receiving a royalty on the back end. So this is really how Pond Carbon brings in revenue, reduces carbon, and it's a win-win for Pond and the emitter. Moving over to Pond Naturals is integral in the fact that some of the projects we're currently working on, customers have said to us, we'd really like to reduce our carbon, but we don't know what to do with the algae. Pond Naturals has currently over 100 active customers. We sell ingredients, obviously algae, but other ingredients into the wellness, the food, and the beverage industries. And we have a number of discussions with partners that are actually looking for algae. So there's different types of algae that I'll get into in future slides. But here we're basically manufacturing our own algae. We have a red algae called astaxanthin. Pond owned and operate. We own and operate our own plant in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. We just received GMP facility there in terms of rating. And we're basically using that as part of the offtake to the Pond Carbon projects. And again, I touched on Pond Biotech. Here we're growing very specialized algae. And within those algae are certain proteins. And those proteins can be very, very difficult to grow. But we feel we have quite a disruptive system where we can grow these proteins for a fraction of the cost. So again, Pond Carbon, the strategic goal here is the commercial sale of our photobioreactors that reduce CO2 and grow high volume of proteins, probably or mostly for the food, feed, and I would call the biofertilizer market. That seems to be the core focus. The business focus there, again, is working with our partners to take that CO2, reduce it. The carbon goes into the biomass, O2 is released. So again, it's a photosynthesis process, and we develop different strategic proteins for the customers. So if it's something specific, give you an example, we're currently working on algae that reduces methane in cattle. There's different types of algae with different amino acid profiles that make chickens grow fuller and faster. So we have a lot of specific opportunities for the algae as the offtake. We touched on Pond Biotech, again, specialized diagnostics, vaccines, therapeutics. And again, the business focus at some point is that we will probably become a CMO for a biopharmaceutical where they'll ask us to grow a certain protein. And Pond Naturals, again, we have our own plant, and we have the facility there where we grow astaxanthin, and we actually have our own brand of astaxanthin as well, and a number of customers that ask us to take that astaxanthin and help them formulate products. So Pond Carbon, again, develops the carbon capture is the core focus here. We currently have a number of projects on the go. Our first core partner is AB Agri that I mentioned prior. We have here a number of human and animal feed opportunities within companies like AB Agri. AB Agri is a division of Associated British Foods. They trade on the London Stock Exchange. They operate in 53 countries and have over 130,000 employees. They first chose algae and then they chose pond. So what we're doing with AB Agri in this animal feed vertical is we're basically growing a pilot plant right now with them in the UK. We're growing algae in that pilot plant. That's being used for animal and fish feed studies. And what we're working on with them up front is a royalty license fee up front. We're selling them equipment where we gain revenue, and then a royalty on the back end. So that's the Pond Carbon current model. We have another partner. It was an unnamed oil and gas major in Canada. They were working with algae for many, many uses in their lab, and they delivered to Pond a genetically modified protein in algae and asked if we could scale this up. So again, these are license fees up front and milestones as Pond grows more and more algae. So this is our second partner in this unnamed oil and gas. And we currently have a number of discussions within Pond Carbon where we have a number of groups looking to further abate CO2 and again, grow specialized algae for different areas within the food ingredients, the nutraceuticals, and obviously specialized proteins. So just touching again a little further on the Pond Biotech with our unnamed oil and gas partner, we received a milestone license fee. Up front, we were given this product to grow, and it was basically they can grow it, but they can't grow it at scale. So Pond was delivered this protein, and it was actually a COVID SARS spike 2 protein. We successfully grew this protein, and it has been put into a test kit. And the role of the test kit is to grow this recombinant protein. It's expressed in algae. And then one could determine whether they require a COVID booster shot. And there's a number of other proteins that we're developing within this area of Pond Biotech. The highlight here within the biopharmaceutical industry is that these proteins are very difficult and costly to grow. They're typically grown in CHO cells. They're typically, very, very delicate. They have to be grown in a very difficult, complex bioreactor, and they're quite costly. When we grow algae, we're using, again, light water and CO2. This is a much smaller system. We can grow this in a 20-liter tank, and it's very, very easy. It's very consistent, and we can grow this at scale at a very, very low cost. So this is definitely an area of interest for the future within Pond. So again, current and immediate opportunities are cost advantage and very, very simple to grow. The proof of concept to manufacture has been proven, and we're working on many other areas within this biotech industry. So this is a picture at our owned and operated Pond facility at the Regenerex plant in Vancouver. This is actually a photobioreactor that grows a red algae called astaxanthin. So again, at Pond Naturals, we grow algae, we sell it into the industry, and we have a number of other customers that we're working on specific algae. Within algae, you can extract things that I mentioned prior. There's a blue color from spirulina. There are this red color that can be from this astaxanthin. And there's also EPA. EPA is a natural omega-3, which is grown in algae. So we feel that within Pond Naturals, we have a number of customers that are continuing to work with Pond on growing algae. And we have a number of customers that have a use for that algae. So just touching again on our financials that I mentioned, we currently have 47 million shares outstanding. We have a very tightly held group of insiders, approximately 21%. Our quarters at times can be lumpy. We had a great Q3 in 2021, where we basically increased our revenue significantly. Just going to move the slide. By 70%. In this quarter, we received a license fee from AB Agri, in addition to increased sales in Pond Naturals. So it's a combination where we also had a small license fee come in on our Pond Biotech. So Q3, we had all three divisions running with revenue coming in. So from the, for the 9 months ended September 31st, we increased that revenue by 30%, 4.3 million. So just moving over to our industry comparables, we have a number of companies that are in the space, but they're all slightly different. Just gives you an idea here of some comparables. And I'll just touch on our team. So I'm the CEO. We have Thomas Masney, our CFO. Thomas has a wealth of experience from Ernst & Young and Price Waterhouse. We have Peter Howard, who's our marine biologist, so I believe is speaking later in the conference to your group, Robert. Peter has an excellent background, a marine biology background, and a master's in science. And we have Dan O'Connor on business development and Emilio on our vice president of engineering. We have an excellent board. Rob McLeese is our chairman, huge supporter of Pond. I'm on the board as well as Jacob Gamble. Jacob has excellent capital markets experience, has a Wall Street background. John Farah helps head up our biotech, and Bill Asselstein comes from St. Mary's. So a very well-rounded team that supports all of the divisions at Pond. And Robert, back to you.
Perfect. Sounds good. Well, we'll leave it there. Again, I want to thank you first off, Grant, for participation, and again, Peters for coming up here. Again, to anyone out there that has not already signed up for a one-on-one meeting, go ahead and send me an email, bloom@lythampartners.com, or again, you can visit the website at lythampartners.com/virtual. We'll go ahead and get you taken care of in either one of those methods there. So Grant, thank you, Vin, for your time today. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.